Shop less. Shop less. Shop.
Welcome to Shopless, where we meet retail and commerce media leaders and hear their stories on how they became the titans of industry that they are today. As we all know, it's not like you can go to college for retail media. Heck, I didn't even go do marketing. So we're here to explore those paths and unpack some fun, possibly a few side quests while we're at it. Thank you for tuning in, and on behalf of myself, Elizabeth, and Nick, welcome.
Shop less. Shop less. Shop less.
In the race for retail media dominance, most brands are already behind. They're battling bloated tags, 30% data loss from ad blockers, and a 50 millisecond window to reach a shopper before they're gone. Enter MetaRouter. Led by the architect of Walmart's original ad business, MetaRouter is the first mile infrastructure that replaces messy tracking pixels with a single private server-side stream. It's not just about routing data. It's about sub-second identity resolution that turns anonymous browsers into known buyers, all while keeping your first-party data locked inside your own cloud. Stop playing catch-up with yesterday's data. Own the first mile with MetaRouter. All right, everyone. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Shopless. Nick, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. I was just towing my son on a kayak on a lake in Michigan. That's every once in a while you get to go do nature things and then talk about retail media and retail and e-commerce, as
I'm
one does
sure.
on Shopless.
Did you also analyze your shopper journey for that kayak?
Gosh, I'd have to really dig back in the history on that one. But the water bear, the one he was in, is quite a beautiful blue, I have to say. So
Awesome. All right, thank you everyone for joining us. As always, we have with us a special guest. I'm going to go and try and vaguely describe them and see if Nick's detective skills are as good as he hopes they are. So first and foremost, Nick, I will give you a good hint this time, which is we are talking about a she. So I know that in our industry, we tend to be more, I don't know, 60-40, I think, at this point. We're not really a 50-50, 70-30. I don't know what you think, but
Colleen Aubrey, did I get it?
no, that'd be a good get. Colleen, if you're listening, we'd love to have you. No, someone who's much more, I would say, fashionable. No
Oh,
offense,
Amy
Colleen.
Pierce, of course, Amy Pierce.
No.
We
She
also want
has
her on
she
too.
has she has a really interesting background. Started obviously, like I was saying, in fashion, and then
Okay.
worked her way up into various
Coco
analyst
Chanel.
type of roles. Analyst.
No?
Just stop. No. Just kind of analyst roles, going to places like Retail Me Not, Circana, and then is now
Ooh.
currently at one of our favorite publications. We use their charts in everything with that famous black and red.
Oh man.
The
Is
Tenuity
that
often takes
Marketplace
and changes into
Pulse?
purple.
Oh no,
No,
eMarketer, black and red.
eMarketer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very
yeah, yeah.
different. Very different. Okay. I am
Well,
stumped here. Wait, hold
well,
on. Maybe. No, I don't know.
okay. We're just going to bring her out. If we could all please welcome to the Shopless Podcast, the principal analyst for retail e-commerce and retail media, Sarah Marzano.
Oh,
Hi.
Sarah.
Hi there. Hi, Nick. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for having me. I'm only a little bit upset that Nick couldn't guess who I was after all of those hints.
I think I was having too much fun. Sarah, it's so good to have you on here. I was hoping, yeah, like you could have been anybody when she started started in fashion. I mean, who doesn't start in fashion and get into this space?
I mean, obviously. And then honestly, Sarah, when I saw that in your background, I was like, we must have Sarah. I really need to know how this journey began and to where you are today. Of course, how's also that I feel like there was probably some pretty really foundational pieces in there that set you up for what you're doing today.
Yeah, sure. So I make this the longest story in the world, but I'll try not to. But I grew up in the retail industry. I worked in high school and then during college at a buy sell trade consignment store. And that's actually what sort of paid for my move to New York City. And then I went to FIT to study merchandising with the goal of becoming a buyer for a major retailer. And I did that. I was part of the first executive development training program at Macy's.com back when those businesses ran completely separately. And so I spent a few years at Macy's.com in their buying organization, and then at Lord & Taylor as a category manager, also focused on digital and e-commerce. And
Did you
those
get to choose
environments,
the categories? Sorry, did you get to choose the categories that you bought for, or did they just like assign you those?
oh, that's such a great question. No, you're just assigned them. So I was in little girls' clothing. So I bought a lot of like occasion dresses for little girls, think Easter
Oh,
and Christmas, and then moved into little boys' clothing while I was at Macy's. And then at Lord and Taylor, I was just over all of women's in general.
Those are big categories, though. Like
Yeah,
women's,
yeah,
like that's huge.
I've
yeah.
been
And
getting into the baby girls category recently too with my 20-month-old, and we just got a bunch of really cute dresses. And I've heard this adage, and maybe you guys know this better than I, but like women get really excited about dresses with pockets. And we put these dresses that are like stretchy fabric things on my 20-month-old, and she just shoves her hands in her pockets and is like, "Look at my pockets!" I'm like, this is something you're born with, I guess.
finding some really funny stuff in the pockets, I think, because my son definitely shoves some weird things into the pockets of his like little cargo pants that we buy him.
That
I have a
that must have
girl
been
and
a
a
fun
boy.
category.
I have a girl and a boy, and I can tell you I find very different things in his pockets.
I believe
I
it.
put my hand in with great caution, versus hers.
That's
Okay,
that's
so
a
sorry, I
very
kind of interrupted you there,
yeah.
but like Lord and Taylor, and then
Really,
like
I
what
think,
what
and to linger on this just briefly, like those environments were extremely rigorous from an analytical standpoint. You had to sort of
Hmm.
understand your business in the moment and have an action plan for what you were going to do about it. And I sort of credit that time for giving me this really comprehensive understanding of retail and retailer organizations and how consumers shop, and really sharpening my analyst sort of skill set. And then I really switched gears, sort of accident, because I moved back home to Austin, Texas, where I'm from, back in 2016 when remote work was like not really a thing, and found myself in this really cool strategy analyst role at a company called Retail Me Not, which is an offers platform that retailers work with to highlight the promotions they have going on. And this is sort of where I learned how to not only analyze sort of complex data sets, but turn them into compelling visual stories that I could tell to external clients to help them contextualize what was happening with their business and within the competitive landscape, drive them to take actions. And I found that I sort of really loved getting to blend my retail and analytics knowledge with some of that external storytelling and presenting and bringing the data to life. So I think that was a really lucky sort of accidental career shift for me. And then another very lucky thing that happened is we had a Retail Me Not company event that Sucharita from Forrester came and presented at. She did like a state of the retail industry type presentation. And I remember being in the audience and sort of being like, oh, I want to do this. Like, this is what I want to do. I found it so inspiring. I was like, you can just analyze the industry at large and sort of teach people about it. And so I been into moving back to New York City, which I'd been trying to do since we got to Austin. And that's when I pivoted to work at L2, which was the Scott Galloway company, and really just enmeshed myself in the market research landscape.
Oh, well, we got to pause there. So you worked with Scott Galloway?
I worked at a company that he ran. There were a few levels between us.
But so like
Speaking of,
sorry, I was going to say from a Retail Me Not perspective, when you said your clients are the retailers.
That's right.
Got it. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
Team
I was gonna,
retailers. Yeah.
I mean, I want to double click into working for Scott Galloway because clearly podcast royalty here with like
Yes.
multiple hit podcasts. But I kind of wanted to go back to your category manager days where you said you kind of fell in love with, all the analysis that you needed to do to, I mean, prosecute your role effectively. Like, take us through what that looked like. I mean, I'm always kind of coming at it because I've been working in the software side of this
Sure.
space for my whole career, but what data were you chewing on? How frequently were you getting it? Where did it come? Like what fed that machine, and how did you make heads or tails of it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Such a good question. And so the way that Lord and Taylor ran RIP as an organization back then was we had one set of omni-channel buyers, right? And the website was looked at as just one of our doors, right? And there wasn't necessarily a lot of time for those buyers to analyze like what the website and the e-commerce business could do that was different than stores, right? So what can we do with the fact that there is an endless aisle? What can we do with the fact that we can explore something like drop shipping where we don't have a commitment to the inventory? Or could we use the website as a way to test and learn into new categories or new brands or new designers? So that was my sort of entire focus, was analyzing things like the sell-through rate and margins for categories and brands and products for our stores relative to our e-commerce business, and creating tailored recommendations that our buyers could then take to their vendors to inform their assortment planning. And one of the things that we did that was really fun was that, so this was back in like 2014. Frankly, like the plus size department within the Lord and Taylor stores was like a sad place, right? It was like, it was not fashionable. It was really just a disservice to customers who fell into that category. And we were able to use the website as sort of a testing ground for some more interesting and contemporary plus size designers and really prove out the fact that there was a need for this, a market for this, and kind of introduce that into a broader strategy. In terms
That
of
is so
the,
cool because
yes,
now you look at it and you're like, well, obviously, but then obviously
totally.
2013, probably not as much. And it wasn't even that long ago.
That's so true, but it really was such a different world because it feels when I talk about it now, I'm like that seems so ridiculous, but it really was sort of the way things were then. And in terms of the data that we were using to sort of determine this, on one hand, we had our selling data, right, from the week before. We would get reports on Mondays around how the week prior performed, how we were doing, in terms of what our plan was, how we were tracking to last year, how promotional events were performing, and sort of determine like what needs to be tweaked in this moment, right? So you're working on those sort of in the moment plans. How can you impact your business right now? And then you're working towards broader strategic focuses. Like our cashmere business is really important. We had a private label cashmere business. How is that performing? When are we getting certain colors in? Do we need to make tweaks to that for next year? And then the other piece was that we had a site merchandising sort of counterpart that helped us understand what customers were doing on the website, what their path to purchase looked like. And we were able to do things like test whether or not editorial content or landing pages were helping or hindering our conversion.
I don't think we've had anyone talk about cashmere yet on Shoplist. I'm glad that we got here.
Happy to be the first.
Who had the
But, I mean,
better store discount? Who had the better employee discount?
Well,
Yeah, that's a
Lord
good
and
one.
Taylor had, we were same company as Saks, and we got the Saks employee discount when I worked there, and that was incredible.
Ooh,
Macy's,
nice.
great discount, lots of utility for if people are like, getting married, etc. But the Saks discount, I miss that. I think about that a lot, actually.
So how much of your prep before you start your career is focused on the analytical? Were you into STEM in high school? How much marketing was there at FIT that, given that you're the focus you knew you wanted to do, was like going into buying? Like clearly the path you forge becomes more, analyst and analytical in general. I'm just
Totally.
curious how that is born in your career.
So I think I have to go back even further to the job I had in high school that I mentioned, which was again at a buy sell sort of trade consignment store. And
Mhm.
that company was really cool because you were literally deciding what to bring into the inventory into the store, determining how well that inventory did. You had to stay really on top of all the brands, all the prices,
Mhm.
what customers were coming in and looking for. And so you got to be sort of this mini business owner. I think it was a lot more
Mhm.
involved than a lot of typical retail jobs. And that's frankly what got me really interested in how all of that runs and how do you make a store really profitable? How long should inventory sit on your shelf? What's the right way to sort of optimize that? And how can you stay on top of what people are looking for? So I learned so much about fashion and clothes and brands and trends and how trends come back into style. And just really fell in love with that and was like, I want to leverage this and turn it into an actual sort of career.
Such an organic approach to it. I
Yeah.
feel like I run into, I mean, just in general, you see like multiple different paths into business, and you see kind of the core classic MBA path into senior manager job at
Hmm.
Amazon, or you see people that get the education by fire, just like, hey, I'm going to get into it, I'm interested,
Yep.
I'm going to nerd out, and then you take steps in your career, and it's build on it. That's interesting. I like
Yeah, and
that.
I think what's been really interesting for me is sort of like every stop along the way, I learn something new about myself around like, oh, I really love this piece of this job. And so, as an example, Macy's, when I was a buyer, and I'm sure there's a lot of technology that has changed the way this works at this point. But we were analyzing our business at a top line level, but we were also placing buys, right? And we were getting really granular around what is the size breakdown we need in this particular SKU, right? And exactly when do we want those deliveries to happen? And that level of granularity was something that just I could do, but I didn't feel really passionate about. I really enjoyed sort of being like, I'm going to stay with the Macy's example, like Jordan is a brand that's doing really well for us in our little boys department, but it only makes up, I'm making this up, 3% of our assortment, and the margin is higher than everything else. So we need to expand that. What can we get from the vendor right now, and how can we build some editorial onto the website? So some of those kind of bigger picture strategic moves were things I really liked.
How much is creative when you're in those roles is like creative fun, what I think sells versus just purely working backward from KPI goals? Like I need to have certain margin targets, certain sell through by category, and you're just kind of playing math whack-a-mole, or is there like where's the soft side play into that?
Yeah, no, I think the soft side sort of plays into being able to recognize trends that are sort of coming up and being able to incorporate, like, you take your top items report, what is sort of like in common around this? Is it a certain
Mm,
color scheme? For in kids clothing, is it a certain character driven trend that's sort of coming
mm,
up? And so I think the sort of creative and qualitative piece of that is really important in order to be able to recognize trends as they're coming and take action based on that. So the analysis and the quantitative data are such a crucial component, but without that, I think you'd end up with a really lackluster assortment and customer experience.
So more merchants today should be on TikTok constantly, is what I'm
I mean,
pulling from
I
this.
think so. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the buyer journey. So one thing I've also heard, or kind of been curious about from a buyer side, as as you move to the analysts and the retail, is my understanding is for our folks that aren't familiar with the buying universe, you would place these bets seasonality. I mean, you're working like what, 6 months ahead of the season kind of thing, because
That's
it's got to
right. Yep.
physically get to those various places. And then my understanding is you not only had to be right in a lot of ways. Like
Yep.
there was a percentage target that you had to get close to for the book, and like
hmm
your bonus or like your comp was tied to that, right?
That's absolutely right. So, yeah, I mean, you're making big commitments, right? You're spending the company's money, right? And you need to be able to sort of stand by that. And there's a lot of prediction that sort of goes into it around what performed well last year, why it performed well last year, and what are the factors that may influence that changing this year. And there's factors that are outside of your control. Obviously, if you have a much warmer winter than you were anticipating, then you might have trouble with your giant puffer jacket program, right? That's a
mm.
key component of your Black Friday strategy, or your cashmere program, like I mentioned before.
What was your worst buy? Like what did you miss by a mile on, and you had to like
Oh
mark it
my
out of
gosh.
stock or like discount it like crazy?
I mean, honestly, something that still haunts me is the Lord and Taylor cashmere program. Like our private label cashmere business was such a crucial component of our women's category. And my last year there, like we just had a really dismal performance. And I analyzed it every which way to sort of determine like what went wrong, what could we have done differently. And I spent so much time on that and never figured out sort of a magic bullet. And I think that sort of speaks to, in my own defense, there are factors that sort of analysis is not going to dig your way out of, right? It could be something broader from not to blame the marketing team, but like how did the marketing sort of change in promoting this? When does the weather look like? Has the product changed in quality? And so and also there's just customer sentiment. Does someone else have a better cashmere program? So there's so many factors that sort of can play into it.
Yeah, you know what? You should probably ask ChatGPT now. Now that not
I
enough
should.
time has passed, you
Oh,
could go back and
yeah.
like I wonder if like if you specified like the range of year or that season and
Uh-huh.
see if
Like
like
what was
there was
going
something.
on?
You never
Oh my
know.
gosh. Yeah.
It's weird how it pulls things in. We're like, oh, well, it's like super freakonomics, right? But for cashmere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Well, and
so
it's that quest for all that data though to pull it together to tell that story that it seems like naturally gives rise. You built all that experience at Retail Me Not to where you go next, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Again, at Retail Me Not, I found that I loved getting to think through what makes data compelling in a visual sort of format, and what can move audiences to make decisions and better sort of contextualize a bunch of sort of messy trends into why does this matter for my business, and what do I need to do differently or do more of going forward. And what I found that I loved about the market research roles I moved into once I moved back to New York. So it was like L2, which was acquired by Gardner. So then I went into the analyst track at Gardner, was the opportunity to do really deep research and writing. And I always sort of joke that I get to write book reports for a living, but I am kind of a nerd and I love doing that. And so again, it's like picking up these different ingredients sort of along the way, throughout my career, and sort of trying to increase the sort of proportion that they build up to my job responsibilities. And I think I'm in a really lucky place now.
I was gonna say,
Can you
like,
give it?
I think it really comes through, like, how much you love this stuff. Like,
I
really,
really do.
really. Like,
Okay, retail media leaders, a quick reality check. You're being asked to deliver incrementality, closed loop measurement, and AI ready data on top of infrastructure built on client side tags and stitched IDs. Whew. That's the gap. MetaRouter fixes the first mile of your data, moving collection server side so you get deterministic, privacy compliant data flowing directly into your clean rooms, CDPs, and activation platforms. The result? Faster sites, materially better match rates, and data you can actually trust across Amazon, Walmart, Google, wherever you're activating. If retail media is becoming a data business, and it is, MetaRouter is the layer that makes the rest of your stack actually work. MetaRouter. Fix the foundation, unlock the upside.
Shop.
So you're at L2. It's acquired while you're there,
Hmm.
and you're writing really cool book reports. Give us some examples of a book report you really loved while you were there, and what were you writing about or thinking
Yeah,
about
and
or
so
researching?
there was so much change during my time at L2 because of the acquisition and the way things sort of evolved as Gartner absorbed L2. But when I joined L2, it was based on this sort of proprietary set of methodology and data product that Scott and his team had developed, which was aimed at helping brands and retailers understand their digital performance relative to their peers in the space. And I think it was,
Hmm.
or I know it was really an analyst sort of paradise because of the depth of the data that we had to play with.
Mm.
So we would do broad analysis around certain categories. Think D2C or luxury brands or big box and multi-category retailers to determine what were some of the sort of trends or that indicated where these retailers were moving, what they were evolving about their strategy. And that could touch anything from social media content. Again, like let's put ourselves back in like 2019. Social media content is becoming a lot less tailored and formal and becoming a lot more organic and behind the scenes, and user generated content is a really big deal, and brands have to let go of some of their control mechanisms when it comes to the content that they're putting out in order to be part of this conversation. And I think I'm realizing I didn't remotely answer your question, but it would be sort of about writing reports that sort of contextualized again like what's happening in luxury fashion across all the dimensions of like the website, the app, uh, Google search, social media, and marketing, and why does it matter? And then moving into Gardner, it became more topical. So things like how to get really strategic around promotional strategies. And say what you will about this, but that was right around the time that the buy now, pay laters were just sort of starting to appear. And so that was one tactic that retailers were taking who were maybe a little bit more hesitant to do an actual promotion or markdown in order to drive good. So again, the coverage at Gardner became a bit more topical, right? Around like what's happening in retail, what's the latest, what's the data that we have on it.
And not just on the buy side or the marketing side too. Like you were looking at, end to end supply chain
Absolutely. Yep.
fulfillment, drop shipping, which by the way, you brought up like the endless shelf. And I thought about this earlier. I've explained to a few people that, are in our space generally. And I was like, like half of Home Depot's e-commerce business is a drop shipping business.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a few thousand products in a given Home Depot store, but there's like 150,000
Mm-hmm.
SKUs on their website, and it's a multi-billion-dollar business powered by 7,000
Mm-hmm.
suppliers. That I mean, it's a whole world. To your point on test and learn, like I don't have to carry that. I don't have to manage that process into the stores if I can onesie twosie ship it from a third-party logistics
Yeah,
company. It's
I
like
don't have
that.
to warehouse it. I don't have to deal with shipping it. I don't have to handle the returns. Like there's so much advantage for retailers, particularly in the e-commerce space where you're getting lower margins in general.
Yeah, 100%. And and then you're competitive at scale to,
Yeah.
draw people in with the little widget that you're not going to profitably bring into store, but then that's a
Yeah.
basket builder or something like that.
Yeah, no, and I think it's fascinating to see. I think it was like Ulta and Best Buy who recently announced kind of either reinvigorating or actually launching a marketplace strategy just to extend the long tail brands/advertisers on their platforms. And I think it makes a lot of sense.
Have you ever wanted to take a foray into your own sort of e-com business or startup brand or anything like that? Or has that not really been an itch you've wanted that's come up?
Oh no, I fantasize about it all the time, but I'm sort of like I'm way too stressed out to think about like where my next paycheck is coming from to do something like that. That's like for someday if I win the lottery. But I think I could do what the Real does so much better than they do it. Honestly. But I know that's sort of a fool's errand because there are very smart people working on that business that are having trouble making it work. But that's my sort of like one of my secret fantasies. That's not secret anymore, I guess.
Way to get that out, Nick.
Yeah, well, nothing. I mean, I've gone down that path. It was really hard, and it's on ice right now. I started a skincare brand in 2014, 15, launched it on Amazon, and you learn very quickly the challenges of running an inventory-based business and like projecting, what is going to happen on this like first ever Prime Day here, and like, oh, Bacchanalia, look what we sold. Oh crap, we got to buy inventory. We don't have any money. What?
Yep. Yep.
That's just one piece of it. I learned a ton since then. So the brand I still own, to your point, when the lottery comes in and I'm not chasing toddlers.
Exactly. When we can just open wine bars and reinvent the Real and get back into our skincare brand.
Well, yeah. So what would you stick to the fashion history, or where would you think you would look if you were to start an e-com business?
Oh, that's such a good question. No, I think I would stick with fashion, and I would stick with like the buy sell sort of trade piece because again, like I think like, oh God, I don't want to just trash talk the people who are doing this now, but I think there's so much opportunity to improve the product photography, the pricing, the seller experience. And I think there are folks, right? We know that resale has been destigmatized in a lot of ways, especially the younger generations are very interested in it. So I think there's a great market for it. And I just would love the chance to sort of get to take the experience I had at my job in high school and sort of bring that into the modern age. I have actually a really close friend from those days, and we always sort of toy around with the idea, but haven't pulled the trigger just yet.
You never
I
know.
like it. Yeah.
You could win the lottery. Somebody does.
True. That's true. Somebody does. I should probably buy a ticket at some point if I want any hope.
I was going to say, like, participation is key, though.
Yes. Yeah.
It's either that or some sort of like large Vegas bet that will, again, stress you out. So maybe not.
Talk. I did not pause on the gambling floor. Maybe next time.
Okay. So L2, Gartner becomes Gartner. And then from there, Circana.
From there, Circana. So I joined Circana to help with their D2C data acquisition strategy. So it was NPD when I joined. Everywhere I joined ends up changing names, it seems.
Clearly.
And NPD merged with IRI. But I was really drawn to that business because at L2 and Gartner, we had all this great sort of outside looking in data about how retailers and brands were performing. But Circana actually ingests POS data from retailers, right? So we can tell you, or when I was there, sort of exactly what was selling down to an item and SKU level. And I was really motivated by the utility of that for retailers who were looking to better understand their business and the opportunities they had to adjust their assortments. And so my role there was really about sort of identifying the areas that we could sort of expand into and helping retailers understand the benefit to them if they were willing to bring their data into sort of the cooperative and sort of become part of the business.
So for the uninitiated, maybe, and so we talk about for Carla in Michigan, that's my mom. So a lot of times she's trying to explain to her friends what it is exactly that her son does, and so we use that as our example when we're asking to unpack an idea. How does that business work? So retailers obviously sell a lot of product. Other retailers also want some insights about maybe what's happening at other retailers or what's selling, and they want to optimize their assortment, but also brands are interested in this data. Can you unpack it a little bit more?
Yeah, and so things, to be fair, may have evolved and changed since I left the company, but essentially the POS database worked as a co-op for retailers, right? So if you got what you sort of gave, right? If you were willing to share your POS data, you would get access to an aggregated view of the categories that you played in with a comparative view of how you were performing relative to your category, right? And there were all kinds of checks and balances to make sure that no retailer got exposed because they were making up too large a penetration of of the assortment, right? We didn't want to give away anyone's proprietary information. And then the brands were able to actually purchase that data.
Got it. That makes sense, and that's helpful.
Yep.
Thank you. So you could kind of
Yeah.
see, are you over-indexing, under-indexing in a category? What are the
Mhm.
items that are, working or not? And then
Mhm.
brands are keen to buy that data because they're thinking, what am I going to produce next? What are retailers able to
Exactly.
deliver on? Got it.
Exactly. And some cool stuff that can be done from like sort of a geographical level within that as well when you're thinking about your assortment planning. So frankly, it was a tool that I would have really loved to have access to when I was in that seat at a retailer.
Got it. All right. So in these last few like analyst roles in particular, are you the best dressed? Like on
Oh
your team?
gosh.
I feel
You
like you
know,
have to be.
I think it really depends on the company. Like when I worked at L2, I was one of the oldest people who worked there, right? And the office at L2 was right in the middle of New York City.
Is
And
everyone 24 there or something? Like how's
people are young. Yeah, people are young. People are cool. People are hip. I'm like looking for inspiration as much as the next guy. And I feel like, especially as I get a little bit older, my style has changed. And so, yeah, short answer is not at every company.
I feel like you're the most informed.
I hope so. I've worked
we
with
won't
some
do a
smart
fit.
people.
We won't do a fit check here on.
Oh my God, I'm wearing jorts. So please don't make me say.
I was gonna make fun of my own garb too, which may or may not include some, some camo shorts that I was wearing to do the aforementioned kayak adventure. Speaking of adventures and next steps, do you dream in black and red now that you are at eMarketer? Tell us more about that journey and how you landed there.
So I applied for the role at eMarketer during like what's probably the most inopportune time to be job hunting. I was on maternity leave when the position opened up, and I honestly have no idea what I was even doing. Like opening my laptop and like looking at LinkedIn. It wasn't part of a massive job hunt I was partaking in, but the role opened up, a principal analyst role focused on retail media. And when I read the description, I was sort of like, this feels like my dream job, right? The opportunity to write research, the opportunity to share that research at industry events, to do it at a company that I frankly had been a fan of for my entire, retail and e-commerce career, and then to get to shift my focus from a more expansive view of retail and e-commerce to retail media, which I had been sort of observing for the past 5 or 6 years in my role as an analyst, in terms of it being this really sort of transformative force within the retail industry. So I thought that was sort of a very exciting proposition to get to focus on this arena that is changing so quickly, that has so much potential, and that I feel like we've really only scratched the surface on, right? As an analyst, the last thing I want is to write about something where I feel like I'm starting to sound boring, or things have already been said before. And there's no sort of shortage of new topics, I think, in retail media.
All right, listener, we've got Sarah. She's going to tell us the answer to retail media. Okay, Sarah, go.
You have to become an eMarketer subscriber for me to do that.
Oh no, the paywall. The paywall comes up
The dreaded
mid-episode.
paywall.
No free lunches here. All right, okay, fair enough. I like it. That was a trick question. So now we know you're serious here.
What's your favorite research that you've done so far? With your nerd background and everything, as it comes in.
Gosh. Yeah, so I did something on one thing I'm quite fascinated by. Again, I think my background as sort of someone at a retailer has made me really fascinated by retail media's impact on the retail organization and sort of the core business of retail. Sometimes I think that the media voices can be some of the loudest in the room, and that we actually neglect pausing to really understand like how retail works originally, what drives the majority of that business, who typically owns the relationship with the brands or vendors, how does money flow, and sort of how does that work? And I think the risk there is we're sort of shortchanging the true potential of retail media to kind of grow and act as a really powerful extension of some of the merchandising tactics we already have. And I think that's really going to come to the surface as we think about extending digital media into physical stores. So I wrote a report earlier this year called future-proofing retail media for the next chapter, which was really about this sort of inflection point that we're reaching where we're sort of hitting an era of maturity. Growth momentum is slowing down a little bit, and I think there's this dawning sort of realization across the board that it sort of makes sense to continue optimizing your owned and operated digital channels like your website. Like, let's make sure we're doing the best job we possibly can at that. But most retailers, like their e-commerce business is quite small in terms of its penetration to the total business, right? So how do we think through leveraging all of that first party transaction data and where it makes sense to do so? So I think things are going to get really interesting because it's not going to be just about copy pasting what, say, an Amazon has done before, but about retailers sort of thinking through like, what do I mean to my customers? How do my customers shop? And how can retail media be sort of an additive part of that? So that research was really fun to write, and I'm not done with the topic. I'm really excited. I'm partnering with Bain actually to run a survey of employees at retail media networks to better understand the challenges they're facing, their reporting and organization structure, what their mix of ad formats looks like, how the revenue ties back to that, what service models they're using, and sort of what's working. And my goal is that it becomes this really useful tool for folks in the industry, for retailers to be able to benchmark their performance against others and to get a really good understanding about sort of what's going on behind the scenes in retail media at the retailers themselves, obviously from a totally anonymized perspective. So I think that's going to be a great way to add a lot of quantifiable data to this topic that I feel really passionate about exploring.
I really want to see that survey. Like it's interesting because too, as someone like sitting in, like to your point, media, we're very loud, very intentionally loud. We know it. But when you really start to think about like how, and this is something I've been working on like internally at Tenuity, is like, I want you to think about that object and like that thing that you bought. And I want you to think about its journey into like how it got there, not just the Amazon box to your door, but like the selection, the materials. Because I think tariffs also brought up a lot of that recently, is like the raw materials. Like, no, I just get it from wherever. I'm like, yeah, but you still had to make it with basic materials. It had to come
Right.
from somewhere, be assembled, had to sit in a warehouse or a boat. And then you just start to think about like adding up all those costs and understand like why merchants are the way that they are, to be honest. Why they're so protective over their business, and they should be, because it is obviously their livelihood. And when you think about like also like the hundreds of years really that retail has existed,
Yep.
and then you've got these new digital channels that came in from a media perspective, you're like, but it's mine. And it is
Right.
kind of really an interesting like headbutting.
Yeah, I think
I've
the
been watching.
worst thing is if you have internal stakeholders who don't feel aligned with the fact that the success of retail media leads to the success of the entire organization, right? And if we lose track of that or don't solve for it, then we're going to run into some real barriers to scale. And I think there's so much opportunity to sort of look at retail media, especially on owned and operated channels. So I mean, the website or the store, is how can that be an extension of merchandising, right? That it provides utility to customers, provides inspiration, helps them learn more and get the information they need in order to make a purchase decision. And then does it act more like media when we move into offsite territory, right? And we think through how do we leverage this retailer sort of transaction data to fortify upper funnel channels where maybe historically we weren't able to tie performance metrics to that. But I think these are things that are going to be very important to, I'm as bullish about in-store retail media as the next guy, but I think there's some real challenges that need to be sort of worked through before we get somewhere that looks good.
I think you're spot on I mean, obviously, and hence your position in the market as one of our leading thinkers in the space. I mean, the transition that the retail organizations are going through. We sell software into retail media network teams as well as into brands and agencies. So we hear a lot of the firsthand issues, and I think it's gonna be super cool to see your data come back from all of those employees. And we've even talked about, because we do our state of retail media survey to marketers. We're thinking about, let's do the state of Amazon next year and then the state of the rest of retail, because it's just so different. Like, what's the opportunity for the and we're seeing all the pieces come together for the in-store offline sort of omni retailer being able to lever that tiny sliver of e-commerce where digital media is running. But what's that effect on 80+% of conversions that are happening? Like, then there's technology that needs to change, like that some of them are licensing LiveRamp but have no idea how to use it, right? And Meanwhile, brands are like over here with Amazon Marketing Cloud, getting a PhD in how Amazon does it, but that's going
But
to
then
maybe
they're
look
not being able to
differently.
apply that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
your
No, I love the
comment
idea of
on,
isolating
yeah,
the market too. Yeah.
yeah, I think your comment on the merchandiser or the buyer or like that retail organization identity around how to wield the stuff and speak that language as opposed to fighting it and having like silos. And even at some of the, companies you've mentioned that we've partnered with, where like, core marketing, traffic acquisition sits over here, but then like sell side retail media on site sits over
Mm-hmm.
here, and they're so interconnected, but they're not talking, and that's changing. And some organizations are not like that, but it's a very fascinating kind of wave and change to be riding.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad that we have you in this position to be like after hearing like this journey, like the role, but really like I think that buyer role kind of has some like mystique around it as well. Like I've
Mm-hmm.
heard different ways in which those roles work from an organization standpoint, but they're so powerful at the same time.
Absolutely.
They're
Yeah.
literally the things that are on like the reason you go to the store, besides
Mm-hmm.
obviously like TV walls. But
And yeah,
um
retail's a tough business, and there's a reason that the merchants are so sort of strong-willed around their ownership of that business. It is not an easy thing to make work, right? And to your point, they've been doing it for decades, and then the business of retail goes back hundreds of years. And so I think there's a lot to learn on both sides there, and that'll be sort of crucial to pushing us into the next phase.
I'm very glad we have you where we have you.
I'm
We need
very
you.
glad to be here.
All
But
right.
sometimes you're not just at home writing, you're actually out on the road sharing your
That's right.
research. First of all, it's a two-part question. One is like, how much of your time do you spend getting to be in like research mode, Beautiful Mind soundtrack on in the background,
Yeah,
the math on the walls, and then the other part of your job, would you have to be out in the market delivering it, networking, and
honestly, I think that's the most sort of challenging thing, and it's something I'm still trying to figure out. Everything from making time to sit down and read all the material that comes out about our industry every day and make sure I'm staying up to date, and then really carving out those sort of, to your point, quiet hours that you need to do that deep thinking. It can get quite tough. I hear people refer to conference season as if it's not an always on thing. And I think so. The answer to that is I'm still working on it. We are in the office on 2 days a week at this point, so I try to take advantage of the 3 days. If I'm in town all week, the 3 days that I'm working from home, to have some of that quiet desk time, right?
Mhm.
That I can sort of turn everything off and just really think. But I have to be very strategic and proactive about it.
In the race for retail media dominance, most brands are already behind. They're battling bloated tags, 30% data loss from ad blockers, and 50 millisecond windows to reach a shopper before they're gone. Enter MetaRouter. Led by the architect of Walmart's original ad business, MetaRouter is the first mile infrastructure that replaces messy tracking pixels with a single, private, server-side stream. It's not just about routing data, it's about sub-second identity resolution that turns anonymous browsers into known buyers, all while keeping your first-party data locked inside your own cloud. Stop playing catch-up with yesterday's data. Own the first mile with MetaRouter.
Shop.
So you mentioned conference season, not us, but that's one of our favorite things to dive into. When you think of your season, this always on season, like what are your major stops? What are some of your favorites?
Yeah.
Uh, Ones that are not your favorites, and that can be for a variety of different reasons,
Yeah, so I think my favorite events, like I'm an analyst, right? So the reason I enjoy going to conferences is obviously I hope to have the opportunity to share research I'm doing, right? Whether that's informally with my peers or formally in a sort of stage setting. But I'm there to learn. Also, I'm there to be inspired. I'm there to hear firsthand from folks who are practitioners in the industry. So for me, I love things like the RMN Ascendant Boot Camp events that Ascendant puts on twice a year. I went to a conference called Commerce Media Days in New York last fall that also felt really intimate and focused. And I think what I love about smaller conferences as an analyst is I think you end up hearing more sort of real insights from the folks who are attending. There seems to be more of a sort of willingness to share and learn from one another. I kind of find that the bigger a conference gets, the more channels things have to go through, the more unfortunately watered down things can become. And you might find yourself in the audience sort of nodding along to everything someone's saying, and then sort of realize after the fact, like, oh, there was not much meat in what I just sort of sat through.
Yeah,
And listened
it's almost
to.
like there's like sales conferences and then there's like strategy conferences.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think there's a reason for both, but when it comes to what I'm going to enjoy, it's going to be more of the strategic focused ones.
All
Interesting.
right, give us your top tips for dressing for conference season, or like,
Oh my gosh,
like what are
So
your
I
like
know.
go-tos? Like obviously layering. They always tell us to do layers, but then I always wear a coat that doesn't like match what I'm wearing
Yeah,
because I
and
didn't think that far ahead.
like really afraid of overheating. I would much rather be cold. But to that end, I feel like I figured out a good go-to formula for winter conferences or conferences where you're maybe somewhere like Vegas and you're going to be inside and the air conditioning is going to be at 60 degrees all day and you're not going to see the sunlight, which is like a good oversized suit, because I feel like that sort of is what's definitely very comfortable, but you look sort of unintentionally cool, or at least that's always the vibe I'm kind of going for. And you can pair it with sneakers. So it's sort of a hack to being really comfortable while hopefully still looking somewhat cool. And I have my sort of go-tos. Like I love Cause, which is a sort of offshoot company of H&M. They do great stuff. Massimo Dutti does great suits for women as well. So I kind of feel like I have that hacked. But then I was just at Possible, which was in Miami, and like half of it's outside and it's hot and it's humid there. And I found myself, frankly, at a complete loss for what to wear. A lot of midi dresses. I think women have it easier than men at the hot weather conferences.
Is true, because you're not really, it's not okay to wear shorts and can when you're going to these meetings. And so like I could barely spell linen. I thought it was for tablecloths, so I found myself learning about the benefits of linen pants, and
Absolutely, it's
you're
crucial.
walking in the humidity, and it's like that. Just it's going to be what it is. I'm going to show up warm to this next one. I got one for you. So, being a fashion expert, excoriate men's fashion in our industry. Go ahead. I mean, we all have a pretty pretty straightforward, blazer, button down.
You guys have
like
a uniform, it feels like.
There's a uniform.
How does the uniform need to change, or do you like it? Do you think it's fitting? I don't know.
I think uniform works. I think when folks are making sure that they are updating the silhouettes frequently enough, then it makes a lot of sense. And I've honestly found myself a little bit envious of it. I think we're not talking about these hot outdoor conferences. Like it's pretty easy to look polished and put together if you're a guy. I think the thing I always sort of zoom in on is the pants silhouettes don't get updated often enough, right? So like when you see people still wearing like really tight pants, like is that you can tell exactly when someone purchased those pants, exactly what age they were when they felt really good in those pants. But I think men don't pay enough attention to silhouettes and how they change. And I also think men are maybe a little bit more reluctant to play with new shapes.
I think that's a good call out. Silhouettes is probably not in the modern male lexicon for how they shop. It's like, I remember that brand, and I think it was that model, and it's like you're not buying a car,
Right.
And
No,
you
my
buy
husband
five
and I
of it,
always joke
right?
about how you can tell like sort of exactly how old a guy is, because like, oh, my sweet spot was J. Crew circa 2012. And that was when the product was really good. And so that's what I'm going to sort of gravitate to. It's sort of like the music you listen to and how you can tell a lot, I think, about when
Interesting.
someone grew up. Yeah.
That is a fascinating take on it. I'm really glad I asked, because now I'm
I'm
going to
gonna
look
look at
around and be like,
conferences so differently now.
I was like,
People-
those are some 2014 skinny jeans. Okay, I know
Right.
when you hit
Exactly.
your career path. Okay, interesting.
Well, that was awesome, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for
We
having
very
me.
much
This was really
appreciate your
fun.
time and sharing your story.
Yeah.
And look forward to seeing you. I will work on my silhouettes for the next couple conferences.
I'm going to be looking at your pants. Just
yeah, and if you are, find yourself on any given Sunday in the south of France before things get started, we can find a rosé somewhere and
absolutely, and a
compare
Zara
notes and Zara notes. Yeah, all right. Thanks so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Left. Shot. sharp, less,